Hi, all. Welcome to another episode of Saturday Architecture. Just before the call, we were just having a little bit of a conversation with Gautam, and I thought it made sense for us to talk about enterprise architecture and architecture. And what are the challenges in, or the lacuna or weaknesses in enterprise architecture itself? And it's usually hard to spot it. So it's one of those things like we will have to spot that weakness based on the symptoms because there isn't a dipstick to measure a good architecture and a bad architecture. But let's kind of share some of the experiences that we have, telling that this is a problem that happened, and this was due to a lack in architecture, right? So basically, if you take the 5 pillars of architecture, there is a business technology, there is a design, there's the environment in which it's going to operate on, what are the quality attributes, and the human dynamics. So these 5 pillars, something gets missed. So maybe I think we'll start with Raja. So Raja, just curious, right? When you work in such a large organization, right? How does the enterprise architecture team and their deliverables kind of work hand in hand the with the teams on the floor, and how does this frameworks work along with that, right? We have Zachman, we have Toab,
Yeah,
ISA, different kind of thing. How does this actually percolate down? See, ultimately it has to percolate down to the lowermost team which is implementing the project, right? What's
absolutely.
been your experience? I mean, how is the structure? How does the flow happen?
Excellent. So you touched on that point clearly, Kumaran. How we can percolate that to the shop floor, literally the development team or to the operations team or the end user who is going to use the system, right? Apparently, what happened with enterprise architecture team, they used to align with the CAO office and sitting in the headquarters, not really into something is happening in China. You go there and talk to the users and understand how, and then percolate it back into the enterprise architecture, right? That was a
Why?
missing piece. That was a
Why?
missing
Why
piece.
should I talk? I know everything. I'm an
That is
enterprise
the
architect.
problem. That is exactly the problem. And that's why most of the enterprise architecture implementations have failed across. Okay. And most of the organizations have even dismantled enterprise architecture, actually speaking, right now. I know, but the important reason for that, right? It is really highly impossible to get that blueprint upfront, talking to everyone, okay, and get that upfront right now in the technology transformation that is happening in the current world, right? There's nothing stable for 3 to 6 months, so it keeps changing, right? And getting that blueprint across the organization at the enterprise level is a very impossible task right now, honestly speaking, right? So that is why I even like the idea of, I mean, being an enterprise architect, I even like the idea of making it really, as we evolve, not really as a blueprint, but let it evolve, right? Not really getting as a, somebody sitting, a team of 17, 18 architects sitting there and getting into a system architect application and try to model everything and then going to implementation, right? That model doesn't work anymore because of the high amount of transformation that's happening in the technology as well as in the business world, right? So that's becoming impossible. So I strongly believe, though it is called agile changes, but honestly that adds a lot of value in terms of getting that evolution. And enterprise architecture job right now, or architecture's job right now, is to make sure that evolutions are going in a right path, just a support system for that, not necessarily we provide a blueprint, rather we support them their travel. That's how I look at it right now.
Okay. And the so basically, what is it? So basic, what is it? How does the handshake happen? Like, so there is, let's say, architects at a project level, right? How did the handshake happen between the enterprise architect and the team
Okay,
below?
so usually
Or
what
what were the
happens.
deliverables? For example, it could be something like, the architecture principles gets handed down, right? Like, for
Yeah,
example, let's say whatever you do, it should have internationalization, for example,
yeah,
right? Or if I kind of go down at a technical level, I would say nothing on prem or everything on prem. Could be
yeah,
anything, right?
yeah.
So what are the things that gets handed down?
Okay, so usually it is a model, system architect model. If you really put it into an implementation level, right? The softwares like system architect, which actually model everything. Okay, the guidelines in terms of all the different architectures that we spoke about, like business architecture, the information, the app, the tech, and the operation, right? So the ITIL kind of processes, what needs to be the guidelines. So basically, we'll provide the guidelines, right, to the solution architects to take their decisions on the solutioning perspective. Okay, so if there is a credit card solutioning that has to happen within the organization boundary, this is how the integration should happen, right, with the rest of the systems, and there is a guidelines for it, like you have an SOA in place, or you have, what is the different methodologies right now. So those guidelines are provided by the enterprise architect. It is there in the system, in the model, as a software, right? And if somebody is doing a solution architecture, right, if they change some systems, it might automatically reflect in the system architect, an application which shows there is a red problem here, right? So it kind of gives a hot map, right? So what is red, what is green, and what is amber, kind of a mode, right? And then the solution architect takes that information, the guidelines, and started putting the solutioning perspective, whether it's a build or buy solutioning, if it is a buy solutioning, whether the product addresses those guidelines, if it is a build solution, automatically how we can get that into place, right? Whether it's in the tech arc perspective, whether it's a Java shop, which one provides high alignment to the architectures and stuff like that, right? And then it goes to the technology architecture. So we provide most of the things through the system architect as a tool. Okay, if I'm talking about a very big organizations, right? If you have small and medium enterprises kind of an organization, right? And mostly it is through wiki pages at this point of time. So
yeah, okay, that's fine. Now, what are the things, right? Like, because it's the one challenge is, of course, the low level needs, right? Not even the low level needs, the actual needs. Okay, the enterprise architect team is kind of, they have 3-4 degrees of separation, especially in organizations which operate in multiple geographies. The first boundary happens to be the geography itself, geography and time zone.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So that becomes two boundaries they have to cross. Then what happens is, even though they might be familiar with the business, there will be geography specific business variations. There is a change there.
Absolutely.
Then technology itself, right? The same technology which is probably applicable in, let's say, Malaysia might not be applicable in Indonesia because of the support or whatever, right?
Yeah, the regulatories, right? The regulatory.
There is another boundary that comes there. Then there comes another boundary, that operating conditions. For example, let's say you will get good infrastructure guys who know how to maintain a NAS or a Cisco. But maybe if I go to some place like Cambodia, I might not get somebody like that with that level of skill set to operate that network or that, right? Then finally is actually the end user. Okay. In the way that I told, it's so sad that I have to talk about the end user.
It is the last.
Okay. But a Cambodian user will be definitely very different from a Malaysian user or a Singaporean user or an Indian user or a US user. Within the shop. Now, this is a controlled end users. I'm not even gone to the end user interacting with the IT system. Okay. So, for the person sitting there, they really have 4 to 5 degrees of separation, and each pillar of architecture, right? There is something getting dropped. There is a gap here between operations in Cambodia and Vietnam, IT environment, something got dropped.
Absolutely.
So the person who is there in HQ, they'll say factory visit, they will go to some thing in UK, or they will do some 2-3 visits. Okay. And say, oh, we have visited the data center, we know exactly what is needed. Okay. Now, how does it actually get manifested? Now, the problem is this weakness in architecture won't come out as a weakness in architecture itself.
Yep, absolutely.
So let me give one example of what I had, right? This is my favorite oft repeated SharePoint example that I had. Okay. Did the SharePoint implementation, document management system, my first project in Microsoft, rolled it out. The customer gave a sign off, 9 out of 10, lot of appreciation, great rollout, all that done. 10 months later, we go for renewal. That guy says, get lost, nobody's using this application. Okay. Then we figure out that the end users found it boring to fill up 10 mandatory fields. So they refused to upload content into the knowledge management system. If no document in, what can I search? I have a great search engine, but there's no content, I cannot show anything. Okay. Now, technically, and okay. So this is for which I got a lot of appreciation as an architect. Right? Great SharePoint architect, first time technology, first implementation in India. Yay, super. We went to 10 other customers showcase. We have implemented it like that. But nobody will ask after 10 months, is anybody using it?
Absolutely.
That question is never asked. Right? And when the customer refused to renew, nobody even told that, Kumaran, you messed up.
Unfortunately.
I have to edit it. Okay. It is really that bad, actually. Okay, but nobody will hold me responsible for having not considered the human dynamics pillar.
Yeah.
Now, this is a site engineer who's working on the site. Okay, he comes one day in a month. He's dead tired. He wants to file his reports, and I want him to upload 10 documents and filling 10 mandatory fields. He'll say, "Go get lost. I have better things to do in life."
Absolutely.
This is a serious flaw in architecture.
Absolutely.
Okay. And because I'm again an outsourced to that construction company, right? I'm from Microsoft. I will never know the pain of a construction worker, project manager who's coming to office in one day. To me, it is like one document, 10 fields. I do calculation. Okay, how long does it take? 10 seconds, 10 seconds, 10 seconds, 10 seconds. 1 minute is all that it takes to upload a document. How hard can it be? No, but it's very hard. Right? So that human dynamics pillar was missed. Result of that, thousands of dollars of revenue lost to Microsoft. As a technical solution provider, I have failed. And the poor company which spent thousands of dollars in developing that solution and implemented, they are also lost. So that clear pillar of human dynamics pillar, which is a failure of architecture, will never be got. So like that, have you seen other places? But then it looks like, but the manifestation is what, end users, no, they are not committed. Bad. Okay, blame them. Idiots, end users, not committed people, right? They just want to do things the old way. They don't want to work in the new way. This is a statement that is made. And architects get away. It's like politicians, why didn't you do something? 50 years ago, one government did this, because of that only I didn't implement.
Exactly. So, I heard something like you put it as part of the guidelines, and that's exactly how it is. That guidelines would have been charted out like 10 years back, but now the solution architects will say that's what it's been said in the guidelines, and they didn't even bother to check back with the enterprise architecture whether this is how.
Actually, the interesting thing which I was looking for is, right, a problem that's happening, but it will never be connected to an architect. So it's considered this as an expose episode. This is architect's problem, which didn't. But typically it will come as something else.
Agreed.
Right? So, for example, I think let's take the case that we work. When we rolled out a solution, it went to another geography. China had its own firewall for whatever its system, right? In intranet itself. When we went production, the Chinese users could not use it. Now, we will say the network team is bad. They are not enabling the firewalls for our solution to work. Classical fault mode blaming, right? But it's an architectural thing where we forgot to
get the
architect forgot to get the. Now he will say, I need this. You didn't do it. It's your problem.
Yep.
No. Architecture takes care of constraints. And it has to work with that. So like that, can you think of anything that's happening? Or happening?
No,
Anything.
so many. Everyday job that we face is exactly this, because a lot of informations we are not able
Raja,
to
are you
model it.
telling every day we are getting messed up because the architect didn't do their job well?
No, honestly, if you ask me, right, if you ask me, if somebody can think about it upfront, all these things, and ask those questions, right? Okay, and it's actually a power of asking questions, right? And if that happens, most of the systems you will be able to make it really successful, because that questioning piece was missing most of the times. It's there in some document, it's there in some Confluence. It's not about that. It is about for whom we are doing it, and just asking questions to the end users and asking questions to the operation guys, right?
What
That
was
piece
your
is kept there.
most painful experience or like face palm kind of a thing for you? Let's say
Okay.
forget others. For you, what does
I
it mean?
think
Like,
we are looking for a perfect solution where it does not exist. So I think what we have to realize is that it is there is so many uncertainties in the whole environment that it is very difficult even to ask the right questions, right? Because nobody, whatever, however much knowledge they might have or experience they might have, they can possibly think of maybe 10 aspects of something. There'll be something 11, 12, 13 which they cannot
Fair
see.
enough.
This is it's in their blind spot, right? Like, so
Fair
you
enough.
cannot do that. So what needs to be thought about is how does means we are looking does not don't want to make perfection as a problem which you want to solve. You want to minimize the risk, and you have to see how enterprise architecture actually can help mitigating it over a period of time. So this is decision making in times of uncertainty, right? Where you definitely don't have the perfect information, you definitely cannot predict everything what is outcome going to be. How do you make decisions in a imperfect information world? That is what I think the architecture should focus on,
yeah,
where it says, okay, we don't know what is going to happen, but we know these are the possible outcomes which will be there. How do we make sure that we move in that direction? And this happens at very large scale. I mean, this is means I was just listening to one argument about how India handled COVID, right? And that is, you can in some ways control as an architectural problem as to how do you address such a huge problem, right? Where things are not known, nobody knows how bad the virus is, whether it will spread fast, it will spread slow, how many people will die. Everybody is making predictions, right? What does the government do, right? They are the people on the executing end of the thing, right? What do they do, right? So they have to make decisions in this all this phase of uncertainty. So and they decide to say, okay, we don't know what is going to happen, let us just do lockdown for 3 weeks, right? And we don't know what will happen, so we'll take the drastic measure first, right? And we'll go through the pain and say we'll figure out what happens in the 3 weeks. We'll just sort of bring the whole system down so that we know what is moving, what is not moving, right? So that is one approach which you look at. How do you make decisions now people can argue whether that was right, wrong, all those stuff is there. That is all hindsight 2020, right? But in that situation, when you are thrown with these problems, same thing with architecture, where somebody comes in and says, I want a solution for this, what are you going to do it tomorrow?
Fair enough, Deepak. I completely agree with you, right? But it's not about perfection. It is about asking questions, actually. So that questions might not cover everything, but actually asking questions. The right point you talked about COVID, right? Okay, so we have taken an extreme measure of just lockdown everywhere, right? Is there a questions allowed from each of this really about migration workers, right? Is there a question that's been raised? Right, and is there a discussion that happened on that lines? That's exactly what we are
Yeah, it
talking
did
about.
not. Yes, of course.
Yeah.
and I think
You see that's what the whole thing is. That you still have options to react to those things, right? You cannot work with zero problems in uncertainty. You cannot work with zero
Absolutely.
problems, right? So the question is, how do you handle it when they happen? And that is
Make
where
it,
I think
I think
one of the
make it
things is
transparent.
really help.
Yeah,
what,
make it
what
transparent. Have a discussion, right? And make transparent in terms of questioning, whatever it is, we might miss something, absolutely fine, but ask questions, right? Making transparent about those questions and have a discussion about that, right? Either it's in the organization with the architecture and team and the development team and the operations team and the business users, right? So that conversation.
No, I accept that. All I'm saying is, do not expect that
Perfection.
that all questions will be asked, because it's not possible for people to have all the information.
I agree, Deepak, but however, I think there should be a structure to asking that question. Today, it is free flow.
Exactly.
That's the challenge, right? If architect asks whatever feels, there's no structure to it. So, for example, right, let's say in the specific thing, right, I have 5 pillars. Ask 3 questions from all the 5 pillars. Now, whatever question you want to ask, use your experience and your erudition. But at least say, did you get information about the BTS pillar? Did you get information for design? Did you get information for IT environment? Like that.
I'm not saying that framework will not help, the structure will not help. All I'm saying is, even with the frameworks, there will be blind spots. And,
absolutely.
But the job of the architect is to handle those situations. Right?
You are talking level 3 maturity, Deepak. Yes. We are at level 0.
0. Yeah, agreed. That's the truth.
Let us at least go 1, 2, then we will reach 3. We are at 0. We don't even have that. Architects will just ask questions for 1 pillar. When should it get finished? What are the developer skills? This is all that person cares about. Business requirement, I don't care. Will it be useful to the business? I don't care. My job is to write code which will work within 2 months. After 2 months, the code dies, not my problem. We are at even that level 0 maturity is also not there. Forget level 1.
Exactly.
Right?
No, so the reason why I'm bringing it up is because people just give up. Right? Because we cannot have a perfect solution, let us not even try for it.
Oh, right? Okay.
Right. So they need to be able to make those mistakes and say, okay, we don't have perfect information, but we still need to do this. Right? People say, let me just leave it because I cannot handle all this complexity. I cannot handle all the angles. I cannot even answer 20% of all the pillars questions. Let me just not do it.
Yeah, but the important core principle of architecture is actually handling complexity, right?
Yes.
How to handle a complexity. That's the key skill set that an architect should possess.
Yeah. So the point I'm trying to make is, people should not give up in terms of just even trying. That's what I meant to say. Because you give me a structure, there are 45 questions in each pillar, and now I will just, it's too much for me. Right. So that's what I'm trying to sort of prevent against.
I think it's basically, that's where ISA becomes easy. TOGAF and Zokman is so complicated. By the time people see that, they say, boss, I can't do anything with this. But ISA pillar is something which you can actually start off within half an hour. That's all you need. See, these are the 5. Any experienced guy will get it. 1 hour more than enough. And then say, this is the 5 broad areas. Please ask questions on them. Now you keep getting better at it. You start asking, now for each pillar, you start asking better questions like that. Okay. Here, this last segment, right, we'll try to do it slightly differently. Okay, probably I'll give 2-3 minutes for each of you to pick up your minds and think about something. Think of some problem which you think is something that you came across, as for example in my SharePoint kind of a thing, right? Something that actually failed. Okay. And if you can connect it to a pillar, it's fine. Otherwise, if you kind of say this is one big problem, and most probably of the 5 pillars, you will be able to connect it, or we can connect it. Where we kind of do that thing where you say, this is a failure that is there. But the interesting thing is, it will never be attributed to an architecture failure, or the famous thing, right? Nobody knows what an architect missed, so an architect will never be fired. All your jobs are safe. Okay. Developer will get fired. Manager will get fired. The CEO also will get fired, but the architect will never get fired because he can never do anything wrong because nobody knows what he should be doing also. The only case where he will get caught is if there is a poor technical implementation, which means the developer should be fired, but he will be fired for something which is not his fault again. But he will never be fired for what he should not have done.
I agree.
Okay. So like that, what comes to each of your thing, that actual end user, the symptom, but the actual is this. Can you think of something?
Yeah, I can throw up, right? So this happened like 4 years back, right? So we are developing a application for it's a B2C, so it's about a streaming platform, a music streaming platform to the end users. Okay, initially we were having a timeline of 3 to 4 months. So we have started with an architecture, blueprints, everything ready, right? So with the website and the mobile application, native applications basically, right? So iOS and the Android application. So we were like 1.5 months into it in the development phase. Suddenly there was a business request that comes in that we got a deal, so it has to be launched within a week's time. Okay, so then what happened? We ditched iOS and Android, so we thought we'll do with the browser itself in the mobile also, actually speaking, right? So we did that. But there is a feature in the mobile which actually rotates the screen only if the user has enabled the rotation mode, auto rotate mode in the mobile applications, right? So we haven't even discussed with the end users whether they will be comfortable with the mobile browser. That didn't happen at all. Actually, we assume that there is a browser and this is the quickest thing that we can go into the market, and within some 1 week's time we just launched. The whole product died because of that particular feature, because everybody 90% of the users are coming through the mobile, not in the laptops like typical browsers. They're coming through the mobile, and the mobile browser sucks literally in terms of like streaming, in terms of like screen rotations. It didn't show us a full screen at all. Literally, it just showed in the off screen. That's the worst experience I had, and I've become an investor on that as well. So that's the biggest biggest pocket hit for that, actually.
So I think in that case we actually missed the IT environment pillar.
Exactly.
And the human dynamics.
Dimension.
I mean, it was completely missed. That pillar didn't exist.
Yep.
Right. I think probably in architecture, if we had existed, and when we went through a change request management, let's say we go through, I got this new change, which all pillar will it affect? Correct. Then probably we might have picked up. Probably.
Exactly.
Right? Or maybe if we missed it, that's okay. But there's a good chance that we might have picked it up in the IT environment or the...
So there's one more thing that I want to highlight, like wearing different hats, right? That actually spoils the game. So if I would have been an enterprise architect, like what I used to have in an organization, I would have never allowed this actually. But now I was wearing a different hat also. Like I need to deliver because there is some money involved in it, right? And that hat's actually, spoiled the architect's hat. And then this went in. And we didn't look at the whole, as you rightly said, the human dimension of it and the IT dimension of it. We missed completely.
Yeah, it's a tricky challenge when we are playing multiple roles, right?
Yeah.
So if we have a framework and it becomes a part of our nature. So that's why it's kind of interesting. I say architecture, you're either an architect or you're not.
Exactly.
It's a feeling, it's a feeling, it's a behavior, it's a nature.
Yep.
So it's not a skill, it's a mindset. Yeah, it's who you are as a person. So for example, I kind of tell, right? A lot of people who are joining this call, like some of the others, like Deepak says, I'm not an architect, or Prashant, who was there in the last episode. So architecture and architect is a kind of thinking where you kind of bring all these things together. It's not just a skill or a framework. Gautam, what is anything that you can recall?
Yeah, so I'm sure that in 2017 we launched GST for India. GST rollout for India. So at that point of time, there was one requirement I remember, which was like any returns that you need to do back to a party, right? If it is a B2B transaction or a B2C. Now, the requirement came from our GST team saying that you have to do the returns with the same invoice reference. This was the requirement. Yeah. Now, what happened was that we got the requirement from GST team and we translated into the technical team, and the technical team also delivered the solution. But when they gave the solution, the best part was they gave a solution in a way that if there is a product, right? So I have some 5 pair of shoes I got in one invoice, and I need to return that. So the way they had written the code is exactly the way GST team had informed that, okay, you have to return against the same invoice. But they have gone to a level that you have to return the same product that you bought at that point of time back there. Right? So meaning that 5 pair of shoes that you had bought in that particular batch can only be returned. Meaning if there is any other product that I am transferring from one store to another, I cannot return that. Even though it's the same product code. Right?
Oh, okay.
So they have returned to that level, and that kind of messed up the entire return scenario. So like, okay, then the team has to make sure that the people on the ground, right? They have to make sure that the exact product that was invoiced or taken in when the product was taken into the store or the warehouse has to be returned back. So they had to go transport a lot of goods here and there, and then they have to do a return. So it was going on for almost a week because of this entire mess up, and then we had to redesign the entire thing, and then we had to redeploy. So though they have deployed, so if you look at it, they have delivered what was requested. But that nitty-gritties of that exact invoice, they just took it literally, saying that the exact invoice product can only be returned. That's it. So this was one of the biggest challenge that we faced a few years back.
I think in short, it's that operation success patient did.
Correct.
So probably here, I think in this case, we have missed actually 3 pillars. One is business technology. What is the reason behind the whole thing? Then the human dynamics part, right? How easy or difficult it is for people to do that, right? What happens in the real world? I think these 2 pillars got missed out over there. Nishant, Venkat, anything you guys can think of?
Yeah, I can go. So, yeah, actually, it had happened to all of us, right? So even we are doing SimFormer support. So when we are providing application to the SimFormers, yes, we have gone through all of our competitive products, and we also done some user research. Then we have come up with a solution to enter their pond related data, something like their water quality parameters and water quality result, and they have to enter the how much feed they are putting in, so that we can calculate the BMS, like something like that. So we have developed the perfect product when we have launched last year. Then when we are analyzing the data, what are the data we are getting from the farmers, and actually like it is like only the couple of farmers are entering, not rest of the farmers are like not at all entering the data. Then when we are analyzing all our competitive products, no one is giving the solution what we are providing to us. Like what they are providing is something like kind of like internal Facebook kind of thing, where they are just uploading their pictures and asking questions. Like this is very simple stuff. What we are providing is a sophisticated one, where we can get a lot of information out of it, so that we can provide a good solution to the farmer bank, right? Then then we are doing some research. Again, we are approaching the customers with the right CQA. Then we are then we have got to know that okay, that farmers are only keeping their data in the ledger, like in the form of paper. Like they're not very time or interested to enter those data into the mobile app. So now we are revamping our whole app into what other people are providing kind of thing. Then now we are just realized that okay, you don't need to enter data. Instead of entering data, you please take the photo of your data. Like we will take care of everything. So those kind of like we are doing revamping. We are like we are trying to implement the machine learning to take those data to address the problem. So now we are about to release the second version of our app. So this is so
beautiful. I think you not only told a problem and also a solution, right? So the human dynamics part of the farmers thing got missed out here, right? And then the solution for that, you said, is like, okay, though that human dynamics should come into the solution. Now that I think basically first time you did what I did in SharePoint and Microsoft, right? Give them 10 fields, they enter it. They'll say pod a day. I have other things to do in life. I have a
Right.
prawn to feed, not enter data in your application. Yeah, good case. Nishant?
Yeah, actually, I'm not able to pick one exact use case where we can map to this character. So one thing I can say is like few years back, actually, we had a requirement from one of our airline to scale up their system to support a promotion sale. So based on that requirement, actually, we had so many discussions internally how we can scale up all our servers and how much volume that they are expecting on the sale day, like how many, about the TPS and the transaction volume, and they gave the figures and all, and we just worked out created the entire strategy based on those simple mathematics figures like this. TPS is around 600 or 1000 TPS and we created a strategy to do the NFR testing, and everything went well, and finally we arrived, like say, to support the sale we need this many servers, and everything was in place. And finally on the day of sale, what happened is like just after we set up all those servers, and just after I think just within 10 minutes all servers went into an overload state. So in fact that sale itself failed, and we had to spend again a 2 hours time frame to identify the root cause and fix the solution, because they had a loss in that 2 hours time frame. Later we realized that what exactly made that mistake is actually we actually failed to do the CQA. That the same point actually I was thinking that Raja was mentioning. The right questioning is the important aspect for an architecture. Actually we failed from their B2C application what all APIs they are calling. We missed one of an API which we thought is a negligible one, but actually they are calling it as a main API, or they are calling it as an API in their each and every booking transaction flow. So we missed to include in our transaction NFR transaction mix, and that API itself finally created the problem, and everything went into a disaster state. So the point I would say, like that is an important thing. Whenever we do, we can take assumption, that is okay. But if we have any option to get answers or collect information by frequently asking questions to all stakeholders, first, as if we go from the typical IASA theoretical point of view, first when we have a problem or a solution or a problem statement, first we need to identify who all are the stakeholders involved in that, and we need to frame questions for each and every person, like business persons or customer, on the internal operational team, infra team, and we should ask right question. And I would, to be more precise, I would say commonsensical questions to each and everyone, and based on that only, I think we should create the further execution strategy.
I think that's a very good point. And I think probably as you're telling this, right, you're telling different roles. Probably I have got so religiously converted that immediately I'm telling this is an IT environment related question that had got missed.
Yeah, correct.
So so that basic thing, that structure, right, which pillar kind of gets us little more focused on that. Let's say you have 1 hour of questioning, we can say 10 minutes for BTS, 10 minutes for this, then it kind of forces to think there. Otherwise, we'll talk about one and then we say, I did 1 hour of questioning with them, where we miss something else. Right? But this is it's a classical thing. It could happen to any one of us.
Kumar, in my view also, or in my observation also, generally, I think the two main pillars that we used to see as a lacking factor in enterprise architecture is, one is the human dynamics, the other one is this business technology. Yeah. I think they itself have genuine reason for justification for that, because since they are architected, they always have an affinity towards technology and technique kind of stuff. And they are very much or less interested on the other aspects, like a business is not my role, and this human dynamics is the project management kind of things, or this that also itself the business person's role to collect right information from the customer stakeholders or similar kind of stakeholders. So it's an, I think, a mindset problem. Because, or otherwise, we should, if we have to, as you said, in the today's world, enterprise architect role, we are still in the level 0. But we are not taking any judicious actions, or from the top companies, CXO levels, we are not taking any judicious actions to make this enterprise architect into the level 1 or level 2, or the actual enterprise architect industry is looking for. Like they should do, or they should, I think they should do some retro kind of things, and rather pointing out or blame each person, actually they should collectively find what pillars or what exact factors might be missing in that context. Rather find a problem with a person, we should, I think, find a problem with which pillar is missing.
Very good.
We should do in that kind of analysis. So that the person itself, or the person who has regret on things, can easily identify, yeah, actually it was my role. So I could have been find out this. Yeah, that's it. In such a psychological way, I think we should handle.
That's true. So many times where I feel like hanging my head in shame when I, like, recently you heard that thing, right? What is it? Bank of America or somebody who had given off money to their
Citibank.
Citibank, yeah.
No, that's an architecture failure, right? But nobody will actually call an architect messed up there, right? They will either say it's a business problem, or the maker checker, that manager forgot to check it, like that. But it's an architecture problem, right? There is a fatigue that sets in. But no architect, I'm sure, is going to get blamed for that, right? He will not take the fall for it, because it's like the same thing, right? The world also thinks it's just got to do with technology. That's it. So anyway, Deepak, closing.
So my sort of view is less from the applications perspective or building those things. I'm looking at it from the building capabilities perspective, how the long-term view of the organization, when it changes, how the sins of the past come to haunt them, right? Okay. So I'm just taking an example of a very large organization, which is multinational organization, which is outsourced literally everything. They have infrastructure outsourcing, they have application outsourcing. All they have in their IT team is maybe they called themselves architects. They have project managers. That's all they have. What happens is, when they said, okay, now there's a strategic shift. We want to start building applications in the cloud. And okay, let us get the infrastructure guys to start provisioning cloud stuff, right? Now the applications teams are ready, asking for stuff. Is we want to host stuff in the cloud. Says, okay, we have this process which takes care of, you want a virtual machine in the cloud, you fill out this form, it goes there, and the whole thing will get provisioned for you in 15 days. Can you imagine that? Right? A virtual machine in the cloud requiring 15 days to provision. Right? So now this, I believe, is...
What if it's a cloud-free sunny day, man? How can you do it?
It will rain. So they have to wait for the cloud to come then.
Yeah, come on.
Right? So
15 days is an optimistic estimate.
It may not rain. So what I'm trying to say here is that, so this is now, they did not realize that if they move to the cloud, there are a whole set of things which need to be readjusted to make it work in the same. So it says, just because we move to the cloud, we expect things to move faster. There is a whole bunch of processes and outsourcing which you have put in place. There's so many handoffs already in place. It is going to take 15 days because you have put this process in place.
Okay.
Right. So it's not because that outsourcer is reluctant to do those things. You put those processes in place, and the SLA says 15 days, right? So why would they do anything faster, right? So that is what because it has come from the day when they used to provision in their own data center and they have to go through all those things. Why should it take so much time? And today, and that organization realized that we never built this capability internally to have any of these things internally, right? So this actually triggered, after struggling for a year or two with this, they figured out we need to do insourcing now. Right? So they went from outsourcing to insourcing. They said we need to build these capabilities because we don't need outsourcing to do some of these things which can be automated, right? So, and that's, I would say, this is not necessarily an architectural failure in that sense, but this is a failure of managing the change of
actually
your
it is
IT.
That is part of it. Yeah, it's part of architecture.
It is architecture failure. I won't let the architect off the hook so easily, Deepak, because if you take ISA, right, in IT environment, change management is a clear subtopic under IT environment.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a clear failure of IT environment and human dynamics. Now, if these two pillars were looked at, it would have naturally helped the architect to focus on the business technology strategy pillar, which means we have to change the fundamental way in which how we work.
Right.
So these two pillars will give you insights into how the business strategy should change.
Right. And you know how all this thing came about? It says we want to implement DevOps, right? And that's when it says, okay, this is this big pillar inside your IT environment which will never let DevOps happen. You go fix that. You will go fix that first, right? So this is where we got involved in diagnosing. This is
what
how much time can it really take.
Is a great point. It actually says that, you know, when you find a weakness, when you get a learning like this, right, and you find that these two pillars are weak, it also helps you focus on, okay, these two pillars were weak, but this also means the BTS pillar needs to be made stronger or it needs to be changed. The fundamental business priorities should change. So insourcing to outsourcing, is it a technical decision? No, it is not. Is it a process decision? No, it is not. Is it a business decision? Yes, it is. Does that mean the IT or the process need not be considered? No, they have to be considered. Correct. So it's a mishmash. They're all connected. That's what architecture is about. Nothing stands out by itself, and everything stands out by itself, and everything is connected also.
Right.
But then when you can take any one and you can land up in the other, and then you keep going between the pillars to make some. Ultimately, for the solution to succeed, I kind of have this analogy, right? So imagine if this is architecture and it have 5 pillars, right? Now, it is not even something like 5 serially, so that if you remove the 3 pillars, it will still be standing. It doesn't like that. It's those 5 pillars which are in a circle actually. So if I remove, even if one pillar is weak, right? People who are in podcast can't see what I'm showing, but imagine it's a pillar of circle of pillars. So even if one pillar goes down, that stability of that disk will get changed. So you can't say I will have one pillar weak and still my architecture will be good. It has to be equally balanced. And even if you make one thing very strong, right, and you just touch upon it, still it will be weak. In fact, it will become even more weaker. That's the case which Gautam just said. The IT pillar was so strong that the business pillar didn't have any chance. It was decimated, right, when it went to production. But if the IT pillar was a little weak, where they didn't build in the tight checks, something could have happened. Some batch bulk could have been done. Some manual data entry into the DB could have been done. Some Excel import could have been done. But because the technical pillar was so strong, the architecture could not do anything also. So that imbalance, or if the business strategy is so strong, this is I have seen, right? The business is very clear on what they want. The solution will never come out. The technology guys will just keep developing. It will never see day of light. So if the business says only if this happens, the solution should go out. All of us have faced that, right? The solution will never see day of light, which is again a problem by itself. I think, but it's a great discussion. I think thanks all for joining. I think it's good insights. Catch you all a fortnight from now. So I'll stop recording.